My dad demanded everything in court. The judge, his longtime ally, mocked my case and called me naive. I whispered 2 words. His face went pale. The room fell silent. Can you imagine having to fight for your deceased mother's final wishes, only to have the system rigged against you by the very people who destroyed her life? That's exactly where I found myself, utterly powerless, watching my father, the man who broke my mother's heart, manipulate a judge to steal her last shred of dignity. It was like a punch to the gut every single time. 8 months after Mom died, and for the 5th time, the judge granted my father another delay. Another excuse to poke through my mother's medical records to prolong this cruel charade. I gripped the table, my knuckles white, watching my father, Leonard Wright, a corporate tax attorney, a master manipulator, lean over and whisper something to his lawyer, a smug little smirk playing on both their faces. My pulse was absolutely hammering. My chest felt like it was in a vice. He stood up, all practice concern, saying, "Your Honor, we just need more time to review Mrs. Foster's medical records. There are inconsistencies that might impact the distribution of assets." Assets. That's all she was to him. Her entire life, reduced to $85,000, a modest townhouse, and an antique oak chest passed down through generations. Mom had reclaimed her maiden name, Elena Foster, after their divorce. A small victory in a war she never wanted. And now here I was, fighting the same opponent, watching him twist the system, just like he did with her, with me. Clara, my attorney and an old friend from law school, quietly protested, "Your Honor, Ms. Wright has provided complete medical records twice." But the judge, Alcott, just gave a dismissive nod and moved on. It was already decided, you know? How is this happening again? He took everything in the divorce 14 years ago. Why couldn't he just let her rest? Let her have the small dignity of her final wishes? I closed my eyes, and suddenly, I was 15 again, standing in our kitchen as Mom, through tears, told me Dad wasn't coming home. His affair with Vanessa Clark, the younger woman from his office. A fresh start for him, a shattered world for us. I remembered Mom, in her librarian uniform, shelving books, making ends meet while Dad thrived. But she never complained. "He's still your father," she'd say, but her eyes told a different story. Clara squeezed my hand under the table, whispering, "Don't let him see he's getting to you. That's exactly what he wants." I looked at Judge Alcott. That little tilt of his head when Dad spoke, the way he brushed Clara aside. It was more than just professional courtesy. Something felt deeply wrong. I couldn't take it anymore. Before Clara could stop me, I stood up. "Your Honor," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "we've already provided complete medical records. Twice. My mother's oncologist confirmed her diagnosis, her treatment. There were no inconsistencies." The courtroom went dead silent. Dad's face hardened, a line of pure displeasure. He chimed in, dripping with condescension, "My daughter is understandably emotional. It's been difficult for all of us." All of us? He hadn't visited her once during 8 months of chemo, radiation, hospice. Not once. Judge Alcott pinched the bridge of his nose. "Ms. Wright, I understand your frustration, but these matters require thorough examination. Your father has raised legitimate concerns." Legitimate concerns? Each ruling was chipping away at what little Mom had left. If he won, I wouldn't just lose the inheritance, I'd lose her final act of independence. That home, her savings, that family heirloom she wanted me to have. "Document every irregular ruling," Clara whispered as I sank back down. "We're building an appeal." I nodded, but we both knew the truth. Appeals cost money I didn't have. As a public defender, my salary barely covers my student loans and rent. Leonard knew that. He was counting on it. "Court is adjourned until November 12th, Judge Alcott announced. Another month. Another month of watching my father systematically dismantle my mother's final wishes, with a judge clearly on his side, enabling the whole charade. After the hearing, Clara walked with me to my ancient Honda in the courthouse garage, the silence thick with frustration. "Brittany, this isn't normal," she finally said, checking her phone. "Alcott's rulings are completely outside standard probate protocol." I've been calling around to colleagues. And? I asked, tossing my briefcase in the passenger seat. She leaned against the car. He doesn't usually behave like this. Something about your case is different. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, Virginia area code. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Is this Brittany Wright? A woman's authoritative voice asked. Yes, who's calling? I mouthed to Clara. She just shrugged. My name is Renee Barrett. I knew your mother years ago. I heard about the case through old contacts. She continued. I worked with Elena in the Air Force before she met your father. My mom in the Air Force? She barely ever talked about her military days, just that she did office work for 4 years before college. Nothing about important connections. Your mother kept things from that time. Renee's voice lowered. Things that matter now. Things that might help you understand what's happening with your inheritance. My breath hitched. What things? Not over the phone. Can we meet tomorrow? Somewhere private? Come alone. She disconnected before I could even reply. Clara was watching me, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. What was that about? She asked. I stared at my phone, unsure if I should trust this mysterious caller or continue this battle that felt so incredibly rigged. Maybe nothing, I said, but then, maybe everything. I thought of Mom's final days, how she'd made me promise to fight. How she'd squeezed my hand with surprising strength and whispered, "Don't let him take this too, Brittany. Promise me." My mother deserved better than this. A new, fierce resolve hardened inside me. I won't let them erase her, I told Clara. The next day, I was at the cafe 15 minutes early, scanning everyone who walked in. I had no idea what to expect. Then, precisely at noon, Renee Barrett walked in. Mid-50s, silver hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun, with these piercing gray eyes that missed nothing. She didn't even look around. She walked straight to my table, extending her hand. Brittany Wright. Not a question. Her handshake was firm, efficient. You knew my mother. Again, not a question. She sat down, ordered a black coffee, and waited until we were alone. Her hands rested flat on the table, not a single fidget. Your mother was USAF Signals Intelligence in the late 90s, she said, her voice low and clear. Assigned to Operation Blue Harbor. Not the librarian story your father spread after the divorce. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. That couldn't be right. Mom always said she did office jobs before college. That was her cover, Renee explained. Elena was brilliant with patterns, with encryption. One of our best. Her eyes softened just for a second. She never told you because of the confidentiality agreements. And later, because of what happened. What happened? The question felt ripped from my gut. Your father, Leonard, and Richard Alcott, the judge. In your case, both served as young legal advisors on that same project. JAG officers, reviewing surveillance parameters. Her jaw tightened. They expanded surveillance beyond legal targets. Used information for influence, for leverage. Not officially, of course. My stomach twisted. Are you saying? I'm saying, Renee leaned forward, your father used his legal connections to stack the divorce against Elena. Judge Alcott was deliberately assigned to your mother's case through behind-the-scenes manipulation. And yours now. The cafe noise just faded away as everything started to click. The divorce settlement that left Mom with nothing, despite Dad's infidelity. The probate case, where every single ruling favored my father, against all legal precedent. There were others affected, Renee continued. A civilian activist whose death was written off as an accident. Elena knew, but she couldn't prove it. My hands started to tremble. I had to put my cup down. This is a lot. I know. She reached into her bag and slid a small, unassuming notebook across the table. Don't open this here. But when you do, Winter Lantern was the internal verification phrase. Ask your mother's test. There might be something there that confirms what I'm telling you. The whole world just shifted beneath me. Mom's quiet resilience during the divorce and after, it wasn't weakness. It was protection. She never fought Dad's lies about her past, never contested the unfair settlement. Because she knew what he was capable of. What he and his friends had done. Was my mother being blackmailed to stay silent all these years? I blurted out. Renee's expression answered before her words, not with money. With safety. With your safety, specifically. Memory fragments resurfaced, Mom's occasional cryptic warnings about powerful men, about systems designed to protect themselves. Comments I dismissed as bitter divorce talk now carried an entirely new, terrifying weight. Wait, I said, trying to steady myself. I need to think like an investigator, not just a daughter. I need evidence. Not just hearsay from Mom's old colleague. No offense. Renee nodded approvingly. None taken. Smart approach. My mind snapped into investigator mode, reassessing everything. This wasn't just an inheritance battle anymore. It was about keeping secrets buried. That's why Dad wanted Mom's belongings so desperately, not for their monetary value, but for what they might reveal. The oak chest, I whispered. Mom specifically mentioned the chest in her will. Made me promise to keep it safe. Renee didn't confirm or deny, but her eyes sharpened with a definite interest. An hour later, back at Clara's office, I was pacing a hole in the carpet while she furiously typed, digging through legal databases. Brittany, she said, turning her laptop toward me, Leonard filed a very specific motion yesterday about the contents of the chest. He's claiming sentimental value, but the language is peculiar. He's fixated on getting that chest, specifically. It wasn't about money. The realization hit me like a lightning bolt. It was about fear. Clara slowly nodded. His legal reputation, his partnership, it would be destroyed if what you're suggesting is true. Manipulating court assignments? That's career-ending. And Alcott's judicial appointment would be jeopardized by Operation Blue Harbor revelations, I added, seeing the full, terrifying picture now. They're willing to abuse the entire legal system to protect themselves. Clara closed her laptop, her expression grim. These men have everything to lose, Brittany. That makes them dangerous. We still didn't even know what exactly the chest contained that terrified them so much. The weight of this knowledge settled over me. My simple, inheritance case had transformed into something far more complex, far more dangerous. But for the first time since Mom's death, I felt this strange, electrifying clarity of purpose. I'm clearing my calendar, Clara announced, surprising me. This isn't just probate anymore. This is about justice, not just for your mother, but potentially for others. Renee's business card sat between us on the desk. She'd offered to help interpret any documents we found, a military intelligence perspective. And I remembered Renee mentioning Caleb Monroe, a retired major who'd seen the paperwork flow for Blue Harbor, willing to corroborate if we found evidence. Mom had built this safety net before she died, I whispered. Renee had contacted me too quickly after the case started. Mom must have left instructions, contingencies. My throat tightened. She knew they'd come after her things when she was gone. Clara reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. Then let's make sure her preparations weren't in vain. I nodded, my mother's final request echoing in my mind. Don't let him take this too, Brittany. Promise me. I promise, I whispered, too softly for Clara to hear. That night, I traced my fingers along the ornate rose carvings on Mom's antique oak chest. I remembered a birthday card from 3 years ago. Inside, faded words, always look beneath the roses, where true beauty hides. At the time, I thought it was just another of her poetic sayings. Now, my fingernail caught on something. A tiny gap where the wood didn't quite meet. I pressed the rose carving, and I heard a soft click. No way, I whispered into the empty room. A hidden compartment slid open at the bottom of the chest. My heart pounded as I pulled out a manila envelope, yellowed with age. Inside, black and white photos spilled onto my lap. 2 young men in crisp military uniforms stood beside surveillance equipment. I recognized my father immediately, his posture unmistakable, even 30 years younger. Beside him, Richard Alcott, now Judge Alcott. Their arms draped casually over each other's shoulders. Behind the photos lay a leather-bound journal, my mother's neat, precise handwriting filling each page. I flipped through entries spanning years. June 12, 1996, Ellen A. monitored Senator Gardner's daughter again today, using her to pressure him on the defense bill. This crosses every line. August 4th, Jamie Winters threatened to go public. They called it an unfortunate accident when his car went off the road last night. I know what I saw in the logs. December 18th, Leonard received his promotion today, 3 weeks after the Gardner surveillance success. No coincidence. My fingers trembled as I connected the dates. Each of Dad's sudden career advancements corresponded with the ethically questionable surveillance operations detailed in Mom's journal. The pattern was undeniable. She had documented everything. Names, dates, locations. Meticulous notes from someone who understood the value of hard evidence. "You made sure I'd have what I need," I said to her photo on the nightstand. For the first time since her death, I felt her presence not as a crushing loss, but as a guiding, powerful force. I dialed Clara immediately. "I found something. Actual evidence of what Renee told us." "How solid?" Clara's lawyer mode engaged. Photos, journal entries, dates that match exactly what Renee described. I ran my hand over Mom's journal. "Clara, they monitored a senator's daughter to manipulate his vote. And there's an activist named Jamie Winters who died in a suspicious accident after threatening exposure." Silence on the line. "Then, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," I said, "it's time I had a conversation with my father." The next morning, I found myself walking into the lavish 32nd floor offices of Wright, Patterson, and Delaney. Dad's personal kingdom. His secretary tried to stop me, but I just walked past her desk. "He'll see me." My father looked up from his computer, annoyance clouding his face. "Brittany, I'm preparing for a meeting." "This won't take long," I said, closing his office door, but deliberately leaving it slightly ajar. Just enough for witnesses, but enough privacy for what was coming. I walked over to his immaculate mahogany desk and placed one photo on it. Just one. The rest were safe with Clara. Dad glanced down. His face, usually so composed, went pale. His hand trembled slightly against the polished wood. "I found Mom's journal and photos from Operation Blue Harbor," I said, watching his reaction. His eyes widened, confirmation that the name meant something. "Where did you get this?" His commanding tone was gone, replaced by something close to a croak. "Mom kept records, photos, journals. Detailed accounts of what you and Judge Alcott did." I leaned forward. "You're not fighting for $85,000, Dad. You're trying to hide this." He stood up, towering over me, just like when I was a child. "You have no idea what you're playing with." These matters were classified. National security. Was Jamie Winters' accident national security too? His jaw tightened. I'd hit a nerve. "Drop the case by Friday," I said, picking up the photo. "Or I'll request Judge Alcott's recusal with these as exhibits. Public record." "You're making a mistake," he hissed, his voice a dangerous whisper. "No, you made a mistake." I walked toward the door. "Friday, Dad." I felt his stare burning into my back as I left. The secretary watched me pass, curiosity all over her face. Inside the elevator, I finally exhaled. My hands were shaking, adrenaline coursing through me. For the very first time in this fight, I had the upper hand. Later that evening, back at Clara's apartment, she played back the recording from the phone in my pocket. "You stood your ground perfectly," she said, smiling. Your voice didn't waver once. We were surrounded by takeout containers, while Renee, completely engrossed, studied Mom's journal. "Your mother documented everything," Renee confirmed, nodding occasionally. "These dates match exactly what I remember. The Gardner surveillance. Jamie's accident." She even pointed to an entry about security clearance adjustments that happened exactly as she described. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Caleb Monroe, the retired major Renee had connected me with. "Just reviewed the evidence. Matches what I witnessed during my time there. I'll testify if needed. We have another ally," I told them, showing them the message. "And possibly one more," Clara added. "Joyce from the clerk's office. She's been noticing irregularities in how your case has been handled, and she's willing to sign an affidavit." I sank back into the couch, overwhelmed. For months, I'd felt utterly powerless against Dad's influence. Now, I had evidence, allies, and leverage. Mom, somehow, had made sure I had everything I needed to fight back. I ran my fingers along the journal's worn cover. She knew this day might come. Renee refilled her wine glass. "So what's next?" Do you push for complete victory now, or wait for their response? The question hung in the air. Friday was 2 days away. Dad would either capitulate or he would escalate. I've shown him one photo, I said slowly. He knows I have more, but not how much. Let's see what he does first. Clara nodded. Smart. Force him to make the next move. I closed the journal, feeling Mom's presence in every carefully documented page. This was just the beginning. The real battle, with much higher stakes, was still to come. Monday morning. The courtroom doors swung shut behind me with a hollow thud, and my hands trembled slightly, clutching a stack of legal documents to my chest. They filed an emergency motion, I told Clara, who was waiting in the hallway. My father's team is claiming Mom's chest might contain classified information related to national security. Clara's eyebrows shot up. That's a serious escalation. I mimicked Dad's solemn, theatrical tone. Leonard stood there talking about his duty to protect sensitive information, about how the court must consider potential classified data very carefully. And Alcott just nodded along. We pushed through the courthouse doors into the bright Seattle afternoon, the contrast between the dim courtroom and the sunshine momentarily blinding me. Clara steered me to a bench under a maple tree, crimson leaves falling around us. This is straight out of the delay tactics playbook. I've seen this with whistleblower cases before. She flipped through the motion papers. They're trying to scare you with potential criminal charges for possession of classified documents. My stomach tightened. Criminal charges? For an inheritance my mother specifically left me? It's a pressure tactic, Clara insisted. They know the chest contains something damaging. My research shows this same approach in 3 other whistleblower cases from former intelligence employees. Delay, intimidate, then settle privately with ironclad NDAs. So what do we do? I asked, watching a custodian sweep leaves from the steps. Clara leaned closer, lowering her voice despite the empty courtyard. We prepare a parallel track. Continue the probate case, but simultaneously file with the Judicial Ethics Committee about Alcott's connections to your father's firm. That's risky, I said. What if they escalate further? They're already escalating, Clara held my gaze. The question is whether we fight back or fold. The afternoon sun cast long shadows as I considered our dwindling options. Later that day, at the public defender's office, my supervisor Liam stopped by my cubicle. His presence felt like a storm cloud in our already cramped space. Brittany, can we talk about your court appearances this week? His tone made it clear this wasn't a casual chat. I minimized the research I'd been doing on judicial ethics complaints. Of course. You've missed 3 preliminary hearings this month. Rachel had to cover your juvenile case yesterday. My cheeks burned. I know. I've been dealing with some personal matters. He gestured to the stack of probate documents on my desk. Your colleagues are carrying extra weight while you handle this inheritance situation. I understand family matters are important, but your cases here need your full attention. I've been working nights to stay caught up, I countered, gesturing to the dark circles under my eyes. I haven't let anything slip through the cracks. Just make sure it stays that way, he said, his skeptical expression saying he wasn't convinced. Public defense isn't just a job, Brittany. People's freedoms depend on us showing up. After he left, I dropped my head into my hands. The financial pressure of fighting this case was draining my modest savings. I'd calculated the cost the night before. I'd be completely broke in 2 months unless I took on extra assignments or abandoned the case. My phone buzzed. It was Clara. Call me as soon as possible. I stepped outside to the small courtyard behind our building. Gray clouds had moved in, perfectly matching my mood. What's happened? I asked when she answered. Your father's legal team just filed additional motions. They're asking for all copies of any documents related to the chest to be surrendered to the court. I leaned against the brick wall. I can't keep taking time off work for this. My supervisor already warned me today about my absences. That's not all, Clara said. I think someone's been watching my office. The same car has been parked across the street for 3 days. My exhaustion deepened. This morning I got an anonymous call telling me to drop the case before it goes too far. Just a voice I didn't recognize. Then they hung up. Did you report it? She asked. What would I say? Someone made a vague threat. I kicked at a pebble on the concrete. Last night someone broke into my car. Nothing was taken, but my files were clearly searched. The police called it random vandalism. Brittany, Clara's voice turned serious. They're trying to intimidate you because they're scared. This proves we're on to something significant. I watched rain begin to speckle the pavement. Was vindicating Mom worth risking everything I'd built? My job? My savings? Maybe even my safety? The question hung between us, punctuated by the increasing rainfall. That evening, I was organizing files in my apartment when my phone rang. It was Joyce, the court clerk, the one I'd befriended when I first started as a public defender. "Brittany, I shouldn't be telling you this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But Judge Alcott had a private meeting with your father last week. No attorneys present. No record on the docket." My heart pounded. "Are you certain?" "I saw them myself. They used Alcott's private chamber entrance, but I was dropping off transcripts next door." Joyce paused. "This isn't the first time I've noticed irregularities with Alcott. Other attorneys have mentioned patterns in his rulings that consistently favor certain firms, including your father's. Can you say more?" I grabbed a notepad. "Joyce, this could be critical to our case. Ex parte communications are serious ethics violations." "There's more," she said. "I overheard a conversation between Alcott's clerk and your father's assistant. Apparently, Leonard's firm handles all of Alcott's personal tax matters. Has for years." The pieces clicked together with an ominous thud. "That's a clear conflict of interest." "I have to go," Joyce said suddenly. "Be careful, Brittany. This goes beyond your mother's case. I've seen similar patterns in at least 6 other cases before Alcott this year alone." After hanging up, I sat motionless, processing this revelation. This extended beyond a personal vendetta against my mother. It suggested systematic judicial abuse, affecting countless others who lacked the resources or knowledge to fight back. I called Clara immediately. "We need to talk in person, not over the phone." An hour later, we sat in Clara's office with the blinds drawn. She'd swept the room for listening devices, maybe an abundance of caution, but recent events justified a bit of paranoia. Joyce confirmed Alcott had private meetings with my father, I told her. "And Leonard's firm handles Alcott's taxes." Clara nodded slowly. "That explains the pattern I've uncovered in Alcott's rulings. This is bigger than we thought." "This isn't just about Mom anymore," I said, a newfound determination replacing my earlier doubt. "It's about everyone they've hurt through this corruption." We spent the next 2 hours hammering out our strategy. We'd continue the probate case, but simultaneously prepare a detailed judicial complaint using Joyce's evidence. The ethics violations gave us leverage without revealing that we knew about the classified material yet. "We need to move quickly," Clara warned. "Your father's pushing for immediate acquisition of the chest. The urgency suggests whatever evidence exists might have a time component." I nodded, feeling more resolved than I had in weeks. "I've moved the key documents to a bank vault. Copies are with trusted friends, just in case." Rain lashed against the windows as we finalized our plans. The path ahead remained treacherous, but for the first time, I felt we had a fighting chance. "They're getting desperate," I told Clara as I prepared to leave. "That means we're winning." As I stepped into the stormy night, I carried not just my mother's fight, but a broader purpose that suddenly made every sacrifice feel worthwhile. Mark Delaney's call came at 7:30 Tuesday morning, jolting me out of my first sip of coffee. His voice had an uncharacteristic urgency. "Miss Wright, my client would like to schedule an immediate settlement conference. Today, if possible." I almost dropped my mug. After months of aggressive delays and procedural roadblocks, this sudden shift felt like a trap. "Why the rush?" I asked, signaling Clara across my kitchen table. Her eyebrows shot up. "My client is prepared to withdraw all objections to the inheritance," Delaney said, smooth as silk. "Leonard believes this has gone on long enough." Clara quickly scribbled a note and slid it across to me. "Don't agree to anything." "We can meet at my office at noon," I said, buying time to prepare. "Clara will accompany me." "Of course," Delaney replied, far too agreeable to be trustworthy. 3 hours later, we were sitting across from Delaney in his plush downtown office. The view of Puget Sound stretched behind him like a calculated power move. My father wasn't there. Another strategic choice. Let's get straight to the point, Delaney began, sliding a document across the polished mahogany. Leonard is prepared to drop all claims against your mother's estate. You receive the full inheritance as originally stipulated in her will. The savings, the townhouse, everything. I scanned the paperwork, waiting for the catch. Clara leaned forward, professional but wary. All he asks, Delaney continued, watching my face, is that you relinquish the antique oak chest and its contents. A family heirloom from his side, as you know. The chest. Mom's final sanctuary, where she'd kept her most precious belongings. The mysterious journal Renee had told me about. The chest belonged to my mother for 20 years after the divorce, I said. He never wanted it before. Delaney adjusted his tie. My client has had time to reflect on family heritage. The chest has sentimental value. No, I said flatly. The chest stays with me. Something flickered in Delaney's eyes. Frustration, maybe recalculation. He reached for another document. Very well. Leonard is willing to compromise further. Keep the chest itself, but turn over the journal and photographs inside. That's all. My pulse quickened. They knew about the journal, which meant they knew exactly what it contained. Additionally, Delaney said, sliding yet another paper forward, Leonard is prepared to offer a substantial financial settlement beyond the inheritance. $200,000. $200,000. The figure hit me like a physical blow. My public defender's salary barely covered my rent and student loans. $200,000 would change everything. This settlement would end your financial worries? Delaney pressed, sensing my hesitation. You could pay off your loans, perhaps even a down payment on a home. Secure your career without the constant struggle. Clara remained silent beside me, giving me space to process. The offer dangled before me. Freedom from debt, from constantly checking my bank balance, from taking on extra shifts to make ends meet. I should mention, Delaney added with practiced casualness, this offer expires at the end of business today. Leonard wants this resolved immediately. Back at Clara's office, I paced while she reviewed the settlement papers. It's your decision, Brittany, she said finally. You've already achieved your original goal. The house, the savings, it's all yours under this agreement. But at what cost? I stopped pacing, staring out at the Seattle skyline. If I handed over that journal, what happens to the truth? What about other potential victims? Clara set the papers down. There's no guarantee we'll win the broader fight. This settlement is a sure thing. The familiar voice of my mother echoed in my memory. I was 16, facing pressure to cheat on a history final. Integrity matters most when it costs something, she'd said. Anyone can do the right thing when it's easy. If I settle, I said slowly, I get the inheritance, but I abandon any chance at accountability. For Mom, for anyone else they've hurt. The stress and uncertainty will continue if you refuse, Clara pointed out. This legal battle could stretch for years. Across the hall, Clara's paralegal peered in. Take the money and run, he advised. These powerful types always win anyway. The junior associate from down the hall had a different view. Some principles are worth the fight, even when the odds are bad. I recognized the pattern. This moment mirrored my father's choice decades ago. Moral compromise for personal gain. The path of least resistance. I stared at the settlement papers, something nagging at my thoughts. Why no? After months of aggressive tactics, why this generous settlement? Clara tapped her pen against her legal pad. That's the question, isn't it? I grabbed my laptop, searching through the settlement documents more carefully. There, buried in paragraph 14, was a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. Permanent silence about all matters related to my mother's past, the court proceedings, and anything contained in her personal effects. The NDA would prevent any ethics complaint against Judge Alcott, I realized aloud. We couldn't use anything we found as evidence. Clara's eyes widened. She turned to her computer, typing rapidly. There's a Judicial Review Committee meeting next month, she said. Alcott's name is on the agenda. I have a contact on the committee. Apparently, there's been a preliminary investigation into his rulings. The pieces clicked into place with chilling clarity. Leonard wasn't just worried about the chest or the inheritance. He was trying to resolve this case before an external investigation can connect the dots. My decision crystallized. I grabbed my phone and dialed Delaney's number. "Miss Wright," he answered smoothly. "Have you made your decision?" "I have. I'm not interested in being bought off like the others." A pause. "You're making a serious mistake," Delaney said, his voice hardening. "Some offers don't come twice." "I'll take my chances," I replied. My mother deserved justice, not just a settlement. After hanging up, I met Clara's gaze across her desk. "You realize what this means?" she asked. "They'll come at us harder now." I nodded, a strange calm settling over me. "I know. But now we know why they're so desperate. And desperate people make mistakes." Clara smiled slightly. "Your mother would be proud." "Maybe," I said, picking up the discarded settlement papers. "But that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because it's right." A week after that, I spread all the documents across Clara's conference table. Each piece of evidence was a stepping stone toward justice. Mom's journal lay open beside tax records, photographs, and the freshly signed affidavit from Major Caleb Monroe. "We have everything we need," Clara said, tapping the formal motion for Judge Alcott's recusal. "These ethics violations are irrefutable. His relationship with your father during Blue Harbor, the pattern of biased rulings, the financial connections, it's all here." I ran my fingers along the edge of Mom's journal. "And we're certain this strategy keeps the classified information as backup only?" "Absolutely," Clara affirmed, organizing documents into precise stacks. "Judicial ethics violations are our primary angle. We don't need to expose Blue Harbor's operational details unless they force our hand." Renee Barrett nodded, sliding a document across the table. "I've prepared this context brief, explaining Blue Harbor's structure without breaching security protocols. It establishes the connection without revealing classified operations. And I've requested an accelerated court date," Clara added. "Every day gives them more opportunity to tamper with evidence." Caleb Monroe, silver-haired with military posture still intact, reviewed his affidavit one final time. "I've corroborated the key elements from Elena's journal. The meetings between Leonard and Alcott, their unauthorized access to surveillance data, everything that matters. Now, we craft the public narrative," Clara said, pulling up a presentation on her laptop. "Judicial ethics violation, plain and simple. No classified details, just a judge who failed to disclose significant conflicts of interest." I stood, practicing the composed responses we'd rehearsed for hours. "When Judge Sandoval asks about the nature of their relationship, I'll explain that my father and Judge Alcott worked together on a government contract, maintained financial connections, and deliberately concealed this history." Clara smiled. "Perfect. Direct, factual, and compelling." The office door swung open without warning. My father stood there, and his appearance shocked me into silence. Leonard Wright, usually impeccably dressed, looked utterly disheveled, his tie askew, weight visibly lost, dark circles shadowing his eyes. "You have no idea what you're risking," he said, ignoring everyone else in the room. "This needs to stop now, Brittany." Clara immediately stepped between us. "Mr. Wright, you're not welcome here. Any communication should go through proper channels." He ignored her, his gaze fixed on me. "This isn't just about your mother's inheritance anymore. You're playing with fire." I studied him, noting the tremor in his hands, the uncharacteristic slump of his shoulders. For the first time since this battle began, I saw genuine fear behind his anger. "Your concern is noted," I said, surprised by my steady voice. "But I'm not backing down. Judge Alcott has canceled 3 hearings, citing health concerns," Clara informed me after my father left, escorted by building security. "My sources at Hamilton and Burke say the partners are questioning Leonard's handling of your case. They're worried about exposure." I looked out the window, spotting the unmarked sedan that had been following me. "They're scared." "Good," Clara said. I leaked a tip to the Seattle Times about an unusual judicial recusal motion being filed. Pressure increases scrutiny. "Are they coordinating their response?" Renee asked. Clara shook her head. "Not effectively. Leonard wants to settle quietly. Alcott wants to fight it publicly, claiming national security concerns. They're undermining each other." Later that evening, we received notice of an emergency hearing before Judge Sandoval on the temporary information suppression motion. Our careful presentation strategy suddenly faced its first real test. We present the ethics violations without the classified details, Clara advised as we prepared. Just enough to establish the pattern. If they invoke national security, we counter with your public defender experience. You've navigated security clearance issues before. I nodded, arranging the documents for maximum impact. Layered revelation. We'd show the surface issues first, keeping the deeper evidence in reserve. The team worked through the night, anticipating every counterargument, preparing for the confrontation ahead. When everyone finally left, I closed my eyes, practicing the meditation techniques my counselor recommended for managing courtroom anxiety. The weight of the hearing settled over me. Rain tapped against the windows as I drove to the cemetery, needing this moment alone before everything changed. Standing before Mom's grave, I traced the engraving on her headstone, Elena Foster Wright, beloved mother. No mention of her service, her sacrifice, or the secrets she carried to protect me. I understand now, Mom, I whispered, the rain mingling with my tears. Why you stayed silent for so long, why you warned me about them. But I won't live in that shadow anymore. I placed fresh flowers beside her name, then returned to my car. Tomorrow would change everything. Morning arrived with Clara's final advice as we approached the courthouse steps. Once we present this in open court, there's no going back, she warned. The fallout will be significant. I touched Mom's locket around my neck, containing the only photo of us together that survived my father's vindictive purge after the divorce. Mom spent years silenced by fear, I said, straightening my shoulders. I won't be. Their attorney approached with settlement papers. I shook my head without even looking at the offer. Clara stood beside me, Renee and Caleb flanking us in silent solidarity. The documents we'd so carefully organized were tucked securely in my briefcase, each page a piece of the truth I'd spent months assembling. I took a deep breath, feeling strangely calm as we climbed the courthouse steps. The unmarked car was parked across the street. My father's Mercedes pulled up to the curb. Judge Alcott's reputation, my father's career, their decades of manipulation, all hanging in the balance of today's hearing. For the first time since this battle began, I felt no anxiety, no doubt, no hesitation. For the first time, I told Clara as we reached the doors, I'm not afraid of them anymore. The courtroom buzzed with activity, attorneys clustered in small groups, waiting for their cases on Judge Sandoval's crowded calendar. I sat beside Clara, my back straight against the hard wooden bench, watching the door. My heart thumped steadily against my ribs, not racing with anxiety as it had in previous hearings, but with the calm rhythm of someone who knew exactly what's coming. Are you ready? Clara whispered, arranging our files on the table before us. I nodded, my eyes fixed on the entrance as my father strode in with Mark Delaney. Leonard's usual confident swagger seemed diminished today, his shoulders tense beneath his tailored suit. He glanced in my direction, his expression hardening when he saw my composed demeanor. What's she up to? I heard him mutter to Delaney as they took their seats at the opposing table. The bailiff called the court to order as Judge Mara Sandoval entered. She was a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. Her reputation for thoroughness preceded her, exactly what we needed today. I understand we have several motions before the court, Judge Sandoval said, shuffling through papers, including a last-minute filing from the Respondents' Council. Delaney stood. Your Honor, given the sensitive nature of the allegations in Miss Wright's recusal motion, we've filed a motion to seal these proceedings on national security grounds. A ripple of interest passed through the attorneys. Judge Sandoval's eyebrows rose slightly as she reviewed the new documents, taking her time. I watched Leonard fidget with his gold cufflinks, a nervous habit I recognized from childhood. He leaned over to whisper urgently to Delaney, who nodded without looking at him. Miss Ruiz, Judge Sandoval said finally, you may proceed with your argument regarding the recusal motion. Clara rose, her voice clear and measured. Thank you, Your Honor. This recusal motion addresses clear ethical violations that have compromised the fairness of these proceedings. Delaney interrupted, standing quickly. Your Honor, these allegations involve sensitive national security matters that should not be aired in an open courtroom. Judge Sandoval regarded him over her glasses. I understand your concern, Counselor, but I need more specificity. What exactly are we discussing that implicates national security without revealing classified details? Clara met my eyes briefly before responding. Your Honor, we have documented evidence of ex parte communications between opposing counsel, Mr. Wright, and Judge Alcott that violate judicial ethics. These communications occurred outside proper channels and directly influenced rulings in this case. Leonard scribbled frantically on a notepad, shoving it toward Delaney with barely concealed urgency. Sweat gleamed on his forehead despite the courtroom's chill. Furthermore, Clara continued, opening a folder, we have evidence that Judge Alcott has handled Mr. Wright's personal tax matters for the past 3 years while presiding over this case, a clear conflict of interest that was never disclosed. The judge reviewed the documents, her frown deepening with each page. Leonard stared straight ahead now, his knuckles white where he gripped the edge of the table. The court will hear the full recusal motion without sealing the record, Judge Sandoval announced finally. Mr. Delaney, your motion to seal is denied. Please inform Judge Alcott that his presence is requested. A court officer left to fetch him. The minutes stretched with uncomfortable silence. Other attorneys watched with undisguised curiosity. Finally, the door opened, and Judge Alcott entered. His usual commanding presence was diminished. His face was ashen as he took a seat beside the bench. Before proceeding, Judge Sandoval said, I need to address the motion for recusal filed against Judge Alcott in the matter of Foster Estate. Judge Alcott cleared his throat. While I see no direct conflict of interest that would necessitate my recusal. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. Winter Lantern. Blue Harbor. For words. For simple words that dropped into the courtroom like stones into still water, creating ripples of silence that spread until every eye was on me. Leonard half rose from his chair, naked panic flashing across his face before he could compose himself. Judge Alcott froze, his knuckles whitening where they gripped the armrest of his chair. Your Honor, I continued, my voice steady. My mother documented everything before her death. She served in signals intelligence, not as an office clerk as my father always claimed. Miss Wright, Delaney interrupted. This is highly inappropriate, Your Honor. I pressed on, addressing Judge Sandoval while ignoring Delaney. I'm prepared to submit this evidence to the Judicial Ethics Committee if necessary. But I believe Judge Alcott understands exactly what these documents contain. A man rose from the back of the courtroom, Caleb Monroe in his crisp suit, his military bearing unmistakable even in civilian clothes. Your Honor, he said. I'm Major Caleb Monroe, retired. I was a commissioned officer present during Operation Blue Harbor. I can verify the authenticity of the documents Miss Wright references. The courtroom stilled completely. Every attorney present understood the significance of what was happening, even without knowing the details. Court personnel exchanged glances. This was no longer just another probate dispute, but something that would be discussed in legal circles for months to come. I met my father's eyes across the room. We don't seek to harm national security. We seek justice for my mother, whose final wishes have been obstructed through improper influence. Judge Alcott stared at his hands for a long moment before raising his head. This court will grant the motion for recusal. I hereby recuse myself from all matters pertaining to the estate of Elena Foster and order the case reassigned to Judge Mara Sandoval. The court clerk's mouth opened slightly in surprise, her fingers pausing over her keyboard before she continued typing. Leonard leaned back in his chair, the fight visibly draining from him. Your Honor, Delaney said, we request an immediate recess to reassess our position in light of these developments. Judge Sandoval nodded. The court will recess for 30 minutes. As people filed out, Leonard approached me in the aisle, stepping close enough that only I could hear him. You have no idea what you're doing, he whispered, desperation edging his voice. I looked directly into the eyes so similar to my own. I know exactly what I'm doing. Drop the case, issue a public apology for questioning Mom's confidence, and this goes no further. He searched my face, perhaps looking for the little girl who once sought his approval, who believed in his infallibility. Instead, he found only his ex-wife's unwavering determination reflected back at him. "You're making a mistake," he said, but the threat sounded hollow now. "No, Dad. The mistake was thinking Mom wouldn't protect herself. She knew you'd come after her estate. She prepared for it." The new power dynamic settled between us like an invisible current. For the first time in my life, I watched my father back down. Later that afternoon, Delaney filed a notice of voluntary dismissal. We sat before Judge Sandoval as she reviewed the history of the case, with evident skepticism. "I see numerous procedural irregularities in the previous hearings," she noted, flipping through the file. "Given the voluntary dismissal and my review of the original will and medical records, the court finds that Elena Foster was of sound mind when executing her will. The estate shall be distributed according to her wishes." Relief washed through me in a warm, overwhelming wave. 8 months of fighting, of watching my mother's dignity questioned, finally ended. Additionally, Judge Sandoval continued, "Judge Alcott has formally recused himself from all matters related to the Wright and Foster families." Outside the courtroom, a reporter from the local legal newspaper approached us. "Miss Wright, can I get a comment on this unusual case resolution? There are rumors circulating about classified information and judicial misconduct." "This was about honoring my mother's wishes," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Nothing more." As the reporter moved away, Joyce, the court clerk, passed by with an armful of files. She paused beside me. "I've filed an internal report about the previous hearings," she said quietly. "What happened wasn't right." Clara squeezed my arm as we walked toward the elevator. "We won." "Completely." I nodded. Thinking of my father's public statement released just minutes ago, I withdraw any suggestion that my former wife was impaired when creating her will. The elevator doors closed, and for the first time since my mother's death, I let myself cry. Not from grief, but from pure, unadulterated relief. Mom's reputation remained intact. Her modest savings, the townhouse where I grew up, and the oak chest containing her journals and photographs would all remain with me, exactly as she intended. Later, I stood in that townhouse, running my fingers over the carved lid of the chest that had started this whole battle. Inside lay the evidence that had brought my father down, classified operation names, written in my mother's neat handwriting, documents that connected Judge Alcott to Leonard through old military contracts, proof of their long association that should have been disclosed. "We did it, Mom," I whispered to the empty room. "We did it." The chest contained so much more than legal leverage. It held my mother's true history, the woman she was before she became my mother, before she met Leonard Wright. The medals she never displayed, the commendations she never mentioned, the life she set aside. I closed the lid gently. Tomorrow, I'd begin sorting through these remnants of her life. Tonight, I would savor the victory that finally gave her the respect she deserved. 2 days later, the law firm's letterhead looked completely different when it arrived, addressed to my father instead of from him. I smoothed the paper on my kitchen counter, rereading the paragraph that began, "Internal review of all cases handled by Leonard Wright, pending investigation and professional conduct concerns." Judge Alcott's medical leave announcement had made yesterday's court circular. The Judicial Review Board's interest in his case history, particularly those involving my father, wasn't mentioned, but Renee's contacts confirmed it was happening. 3 other attorneys called me that morning, each hesitantly describing patterns they'd noticed in Alcott's courtroom when Leonard appeared before him. "Ms. Wright?" A reporter's voicemail played on the speaker. "We're doing a piece on Judge Alcott's unusual recusal. Many experienced judges don't step down mid-case without explanation. Would you care to comment?" I deleted the message without returning the call. Some victories, I realized, deserved privacy. Clara arrived with coffee and a smile that could light up Seattle's darkest winter day. "Your mother built the perfect case from beyond the grave," she said, setting a cardboard tray on my counter. The evidence was meticulous. "The timeline is impeccable." "She always was thorough," I said, pulling the executor's release form from my bag. Look what arrived this morning. Full access to everything. No restrictions. The chest now sat proudly in my living room, its brass hardware gleaming in the afternoon light. No more court battles. That night, I slept in my mother's townhouse for the first time since winning the case. The bedroom walls still held her favorite watercolor landscapes. Her reading chair sat by the window, where the morning light would stream through. I curled under her quilt and felt wrapped in her protection, just as I had been all along without even knowing it. Renee and Caleb visited the following weekend, bringing old photographs and stories from my mother's military days. Elena never talked about what happened because she was protecting you, Renee said, patting my hand. Your mother would be so proud of how you handled this. Caleb nodded. She fought with documentation and patience. You did exactly the same. 6 months passed in a blur of change. I continued my work as a public defender, but something fundamental had shifted within me. I stood taller in courtrooms now, challenging inappropriate rulings with precision rather than frustration. When Judge Martinez tried to rush through a questionable warrant in one of my cases, I cited 3 precedents and requested proper review without a hint of uncertainty in my voice. The framed photo of my mother sat on my desk at work, not the formal portrait from her funeral program, but one Renee had given me, Elena in her Air Force uniform, young and confident, eyes bright with purpose. Beside it lay her leather-bound journal, its most important excerpts preserved and others carefully redacted before submission to the Ethics Committee. I'd even started mentoring first-year public defenders on maintaining ethical boundaries in challenging situations. Document everything, I tell them. Preparation is power. Preparation. Leonard lost his partnership after the firm's internal review. We pass each other occasionally in courthouse hallways now, him with fewer clients, me with growing confidence. Our exchanges are brief, civil. The rage that once burned through me has cooled into something calmer, the quiet satisfaction of truth finally acknowledged. The Washington State Bar Association invited me to speak at their spring conference about judicial accountability. I titled my presentation, Methodical Justice, When Process Protects Truth. Mom would have appreciated the careful wording. The townhouse in Tacoma no longer felt like a battleground. I'd arranged her books on the shelves, displayed her photographs, and placed her favorite blue ceramic vase where sunlight caught it each afternoon. The oak chest sat in the living room, no longer holding secrets, but filled with family photos, her military commendations, and mementos I'd rediscovered. Last month, a young woman came to my office with a familiar story, a judge with connections to opposing counsel, rulings that defied legal reasoning, procedural delays without merit. Instead of simply sympathizing, I pulled out a fresh legal pad. Tell me every detail, I said. We're going to document the pattern. I showed her how to file for judicial review, how to request specific documents through properly worded motions, how to build a case methodically rather than react emotionally. Sometimes justice requires patience and preparation, I explained, hearing my mother's wisdom echo in my own words. The Elena Foster Integrity Fund launched with $35,000 from my inheritance. Its mission: providing legal resources to those facing judicial bias. 3 cases of misconduct have already been exposed through the fund's support. Next year, we hope to expand our scope and perhaps develop a guest lecture series for law students about ethical boundaries in practice. Today, I placed fresh flowers on my mother's grave. The autumn wind rustled oak leaves overhead as I told her about the fund's progress, about the cases we're supporting, about my plans to approach Seattle University's law program, about a potential workshop series. You taught me that sometimes the most powerful words are the ones you save until exactly the right moment, I said, adjusting the flowers against her headstone. I thought about all she'd kept hidden to protect me, all she'd documented to empower me when the time was right. The wind lifted my hair as I stood to leave, carrying my final words to her. Justice isn't always about revealing everything. Sometimes it's about knowing precisely when and how to use the truth.